Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from Innova.buzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast today from Los Angeles in California, Debra Eckerling, who's a goal strategist, an award-winning author, a workshop leader, a podcaster who's on a mission to make goal setting as joyful and as contagious as a good laugh, and we can see that already. She's the mastermind behind the DEB Method for Goal Setting Simplified, the author of 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting, and one of the few people who can turn a networking event into a celebration. Welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast, Dev. It's a real treat to have you as my guest.
Well, thank you for having me and for the beautiful introduction. It definitely goes in like the top 5 ways people have ever introduced me. So thank you. I feel seen, like you totally get me, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Excellent. Well, I can't wait to dive in further because you have this magical way of making goals, making networking, and even book proposals, as I've learned in one of the conversations we had, feel like a party that everyone wants to attend. So tell us, what's the spark behind your mission and what kind of impact do you aim to make in the world?
Wow. How long is the show? Okay. The short version is the secret to goal setting and goal getting is setting the foundation for your goals, because you can't get what you want unless you know what that is. But when you know what you love, you know what you want to put out into the world to make it better, in my case, goals, you use that foundation as the springboard, and then anything is possible.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really important point you made there about knowing exactly what you want. And sometimes we set these goals that are not actually our goals, right? There's sort of somebody else says you should study this and you should do this and all those shoulds, and we kind of set up almost set up to failure because we're not absolutely, um, yeah, they're not our goals. They're not kind of it's
Like,
not what I want, and we don't understand that. We don't realize that.
it's true. And I remember, so I've done a lot of things, but particularly when I spent time in the corporate world, there were people who would commute 3 hours a day to a job they hated. It made no sense. I mean, if you're going to be miserable, at least don't commute.
Yeah.
I mean, it was way before everybody was teleconnected, but that's the thing. It's we do things because this is our education, so we keep going, or we do things because someone said you're really talented at this, you should pursue this. Or one of my favorites, as you mentioned, I do book development and I help people with nonfiction book proposals. You should write a book.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me tell you a great big secret. If you are not invested
Mm.
in the work that you're putting out in the world, whether it's a book, a podcast, or your career or whatever, people can tell,
Yeah.
and you are not setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, that's right. And I've had the "you should write a book" comment given to me so many different times, and I say, "Well, yeah, I've got heaps of material that I could write a book. It wouldn't be that difficult for me to come up with the ideas, the material and that." But it's exactly what you said. I was sort of like, "Yeah, what's in it for me? I'm not really driven to do it."
I had a client so I do workshops and one-on-one coaching, whether it's for goal setting or projects or books. And I had a client, this was several years ago, who was literally writing a book because people told her, you had a fascinating life.
Hmm.
You need to write a book. You need to write these vignettes. And after a couple months of us meeting weekly, it might not have been that long, and her missing her deadlines for her assignments, I said, you know what? Let's take a break for the summer and see how you feel about this project. She wasn't writing the stories for her.
Hmm.
She was writing them because people said, boy, you were a fascinating part of history. And she was. It was like a microcosm within a bit of pop culture. Let's see if I can make it any more vague. But the point is, she didn't want to write the book.
Hmm.
She had other things she wanted to do. So we took a hiatus and never got back to working together, which, was a shame because I enjoyed the conversations. But I'm not going to work with somebody who's not invested in their own outcome. And that's really, to bring it back to goals, you need to be invested in the outcome.
Hmm.
You need to be wanting to work towards something. And, let's say you have a boring job you don't love. Most people cannot quit their job, even if it is a boring job they don't love. But what you can do is figure out what lights you up and do something on the side and let that joy fuel you. And maybe it'll make the other things you have to do not so. That would be the technical term.
Yeah, that's a good way to approach it. And also, if it's with a job situation and you can't leave the job because you have a mortgage to pay, you have a family to support, whatever.
And you like to eat.
Yeah, and you like to
Right?
eat and have a nice home and all that. Yeah. The other thing which excites you and it could turn into a little side hustle, which could grow into an income source that allows you to leave that boring or job that you hate.
Yes. And ideally, yes, it grows into something. But even if you approach it as like, this is my hit of joy, you know, I've got this secret thing that I'm working on that makes me so happy. And you let that happiness leak over to the more boring parts of your life because it's not everything. When the job you don't like is everything, is there anything more depressing? But if you're toiling is something, but it's not everything, it somehow makes it a lot more palatable.
All right. Well, coming back to this idea of a goal that we're really passionate about, a goal that we're invested in, first of all, how do we kind of assess? Because we all set ourselves goals of some sort, right? And achieving goals is always a big dopamine hit. But how do we assess if this is just a goal I've set because I've got nothing else to do, or because somebody else said you should write a book or you should do this, as opposed to, oh, I really want to do this, and let's build a goal around that.
Well, I'm sure this next sentence will be of no surprise. It starts with the DEB method of goal setting simplified. And that is, so I had been leading goal groups and workshops and assisting people for years. And my background is project management and communications. And this was spring 2018. My main communication client was going away. And my mom said, well, you hate SMART goals. Why don't you create DEB goals? So it turned out that my name worked perfectly with what I've been teaching for years. And so DEB stands for determine your mission, explore your options, brainstorm your path. So D, determine your mission. You can't get what you want unless you know what that is. E, explore your options. Okay, I want this life, but what does it actually look like? And then brainstorm your path is all about making a plan that sets you up for success. So the first step, the DEB method, that is where you get your core, your foundation, where you really tap into that thing that's going to light you up, that you want to really invest in. And it starts with visualizing. When you think of the life you want, what does that look like? Are you a best-selling author? Are you a known speaker or expert in a field? Are you employee of the month at your dream company, or are you CEO of a company that offers a service or product that people need? What is that? Or do you just live a happy, well-balanced life and you've got plenty of family time? So you start with that thing. What does that life you want look like? And then you build to it. So from that, you want to write your current bio, but really leaning into the things that you love. And then your future bio that you write in the present tense in the third person with the you that you want to exist, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years from now. Do you remember way back when the question was always, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
You can't even say that anymore because things move so quickly, which is good. But think about the future you want. And from there, you can create a mission statement, which is who you are, what makes you unique, and how you will help. And then you distill it into a motto. So that, I know I went through the D really quickly, but it's really, that is where you get that foundation. You get that North Star So as you're on this path, you have a mission and a motto to guide you when opportunities come your way. You could say, oh, is this in alignment? Great. Yes, let's do it. Or if it isn't, is there another value? If yes, then yes, let's do it. And if not, like really assess if what you're doing is in alignment with who you are and what you want to create.
Yeah, so it creates a, like you say, a North Star for guiding everything that you do. Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things you touched on there, and I'm curious to explore this a little bit more, that's sort of managing those requests and setting the boundaries. So how do you deal with those in order to not close doors, so as it were, and also not fall victim to FOMO?
Well, a great word to use if something comes your way is like, not now, not at this time. A big thing with saying no to opportunities that you need to remember is when you say to something, if you say no to something that isn't a fit, you're saying yes to yourself and you're giving someone else an opportunity to say yes. So when you think of it as I would really love to help you out, but I can't at this time. I've got a lot of deadlines or it's not really within my bandwidth right now. And you could say, would you like me to reach out to my network to see if there's someone who's a fit for it? Or it can be as simple as, feel free to follow up in like 3-6 months if another opportunity comes my way. So you can bake it a little bit. One of my favorite example, I've got a really good example of this. And this was before I wrote your goal guide, which came out in 2020. So a bit ago, a woman asked me to be on a panel of women working in a corporate setting. I hadn't worked in corporate for at least 10 years at this point, but it was a friend. So I said yes. And I regretted it the second I said yes. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it anyway. The morning of the event, the venue fell through and the event was canceled. So if that is not the universe watching out for me,
Yeah.
I don't know what is. And then when she rescheduled it, it was for January. And I told her I'd love to help you out, but January is goal season and I need to keep myself open for workshops and opportunities. I am unavailable. And it turned out something came out for that exact night in January that I was able to say yes to because I had told this woman no. So realizing that it's all about like the greater good for everybody. It's not just about you. It's about now. If you'll permit me to be snarky, she filled my position on the panel with a 20-something life coach. And I've got a little bit of an issue with 20-something and life coach in the same sentence, but it really kind of proved to me, if that's what she would slot in instead of me, that it was the right decision for me not to be on that panel.
Yeah. 20-something life coach. Yeah, it reminds me of because you mentioned corporate world, connecting those two things in my mind. I was thinking back to the days when we had consultants come in from one of the big consulting firms. I won't name them, but it was one of the big ones. And these were young chaps in their 20s, and they'd studied all the textbooks. They knew all the theory, but then they were like, well, this is how you do this. And we said, no, we've evolved that a lot further, but we've evolved it from here, which is your textbook stuff, to here, and we want to improve from there. And they said, well, let's go back to this. I said, no, we've evolved. These guys got no practical experience at all. And
it ties actually perfectly when we're talking about the mission statement. Everybody is unique. Everybody approaches their business or their expertise from their own experience, both personal and professional, which is why you and I both have the same reaction to 20. And I know that there are exceptions, and I've met a few of people who've had a lot of life experience and have things to share
Hmm.
in their 20s. And I can think of a couple off the top of my head who I would put in that, okay, they do have things to teach. But most people, you need to get in there and
Hmm.
dig in and explore. But when you're looking at, and I love using food write. I also host a food podcast and do some food writing. And I think food blogging is one of the best examples of a flooded market that's got room for everybody, because everybody's got a different take on that. Even if you don't love food, it's a take on food.
Hmm.
So when you're looking at your mission, think about what drove you to what it is that you do and what unique things about your background really help you to create whatever it is you want to create, whether it's an idea or product, or even just to be the best um, worker bee. I know there's probably a better word to use than that, but maybe you don't want your own business. Maybe you want to be the number 2 at someone else's company. Great.
Hmm.
Good for you, because that's necessary as well. But when you gift yourself the time to really think about, okay, what drives me? What would make me happy? What is a good fit for me to pursue? Then you're really solid. And you know that wherever you go, it's going to be great because you've got that fuel, that passion behind it.
Hmm. Yeah, wonderful advice. One of the things that you also talk about quite a bit in the DEB method is celebrating wins, and I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit about why that's so important, and a time that, say, a celebration actually led to the next breakthrough for somebody, either yourself or somebody you've worked with.
Whenever I do this, whether it's one-on-one stuff or leading workshop, I start with, what's your win? And this could be for an organization, or one of my favorites is to go into companies right before the annual reviews and do my DEB workshops with their people, because you need to know what your wins are. You need to know what your successes are. Well, for a couple reasons. One, we forget.
Hmm.
We get so busy with the slog of creating this life that we want, this business, this company, this thought leadership, that we forget all the wins along the way. It just feels like it's taking forever. So when you start with, okay, what is your win? You really have to think about, what is my win for the day, the week, the year? So it gives you a second to pause. And when I do these workshops for organizations, I tell everybody, you get a gold star because you're here today and you chose yourself and your goals, which is a win.
Hmm.
You want something bigger, better, more grandiose than what you have right now. And gifting yourself the time to explore what that means is a win. So you start with the win, and then you can take that energy as you plan for the next thing.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. I love that, and reminds me of my business coach. She used to run weekly, well, it was a monthly workshop. Seemed like weekly, seemed like happened very regularly. But yeah, it was a monthly workshop, and the first thing she did, she went around the room. There were maybe half a dozen of us in the workshop. It was a very small group, and the first thing she did was, okay, what was awesome over the last month? And it's interesting because, I mean, over time we knew that question was going to be asked, so I kind of reflected beforehand and had stuff listed and prepared and ready to talk about in more detail. But if somebody says that to you cold and you put on the spot, you actually have to think really hard about it. Whereas if somebody said, "What's gone wrong in the last week?" Bang, you'll have the answer like that. So it's kind of interesting, isn't it, that human nature, that we dwell so much over the stuff that didn't work out the way we expected or hoped. And yet the things that we can tick off our list, even though we get that short endorphin hit, we forget about it straight away.
It goes back to what I was saying a minute ago, especially when you're building something. It takes a long time. And you can get so lost in that slog of getting from point A to point Z. But that's why it's so important to remember those wins, because in one thing that I recommend all the time is to just keep a win list. So at the end of the day, write 1, 2, or 3 good things that happen. Maybe it is you made soup. Maybe it was you survived, or it could be like, I was the guest on this awesome podcast, but and I keep it in my calendar, so I get a reminder every day at the end of the day to write my 1 to 3 wins, and then I will save it as the next day. So get the reminder again, and every month I start a new win calendar appointment. And that way, when it feels like things are taking forever, you can look at your list and be like, no, I'm doing pretty good. So and to even go back what you were talking about before with your coach, I started leading goal groups. Years ago, I was doing events for Barnes & Noble. This is back when I lived in Chicago, and I've been in LA for more than 25 years. So whenever I needed to fill my calendar, I would hang out in the cafe because I wanted it to be a bookstore for the community. One day, one of my regulars came in and said, will you start a writer support group? And I said, if you think people show up, let's give it a shot. And for me, it was, what did you accomplish? What support do you need? What are your goals for next time? And that's really what got me in this space, because I wasn't going to ask anybody to do anything I wasn't prepared to do myself. So I was sharing my wins. I was setting goals. And I would say a few months into this, I graduated from school with a degree in journalism, ended up working in the bookstore. I always wanted to do more freelance writing. I'd say within a few months of this, I was at this, it was a Generation Expo, again, dating myself. And there was a guy selling magazine subscriptions. And I said, are you looking for writers? And he said, actually, we are. So because I was setting this goal to write spec articles, that was what I would do for every one of these goal meetings. I had the material, I had the spec articles that were ready when the question was asked. So I told the story a little bit backwards, but the point is, when you are working towards something and when you've got a community around you that's rallying you, that's the other great thing about groups, is when you see other people accomplishing, it's really easy to say, well, they can do it. I can do it too. And it was when I restarted the group in LA, it evolved. It was a writer support group, now writers, creatives, and entrepreneurs. I've got my Write On Online group, and I recently started a virtual version of this. So I do my show as Goal Chat and Goal Chat Live, and now I have Goal Chat Online. So once a month, I'm now doing a meetup where people can, again, share their wins, connect with others for resources, and say what they're working on so they can get the cheerleading from me, but others in the community.
Yeah, I love it. So one of the things you touched on earlier, and I thought that's an interesting kind of combination, the food part. And I know you do run a food blog, and we'll post a link to that in the show notes or a podcast, right? And so if the DEB method was a recipe, what would be the secret ingredient or secret ingredients that most people overlook and that they have to have because it will make all the difference in the final dish?
Oh my goodness, you weren't kidding when you were saying this is going to be one of the best interviews I've ever done. I love that so much. The secret ingredient is passion, and it sounds so like it's an overused word. Well, it's overused for a reason. I have an exercise I love. I call it directed journaling, and it is like the all-purpose solution for if you're stuck, whether you don't know what to do next or you're trying to decide between different things, different paths to take. And what you do is you set 3, 4, 5, 15-minute appointments with yourself. During that time, just brainstorm, free write the answer to a simple question or series of questions. So it can be, what's next? And you're just babbling what's next. Or should I do this thing or that thing? Or what product do I want to create? Or how do I want to express my thought leadership? Whatever it is, but just very specific. And do this 3, 4, 5 times. And the trick is, don't read any of your writing babblings until after you've completed the exercise, because that will tell you what you're passionate about. You may think that there was one thing that you wanted to do, but maybe you mentioned it twice. And something else you thought was fleeting, you mentioned every single time you sat down to write multiple times. So that really shows what you're invested in, what you're excited about. And you need, the secret ingredient, I guess, isn't the passion, it's to listen to the passion.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? And play with those ideas and see where it goes.
Hmm.
And you want to talk about foreshadowing. I am a reformed non-cook. I used to think it was much easier to dial for dinner than it was to cook. And then I got an Instant Pot and realized you could put in ingredients and then do things, and then you're rewarded with food. So that was like gateway for me. But years ago, so I self-published my first 2 books. One was Purple Pencil Adventures, Writing Prompts for Kids of All Ages. The second one was Write on Blogging, 51 Tips to Create, Write, and Promote Your Blog. And in that one, I talked a lot about food blogging, as I mentioned before, and how everybody's unique. And I feel like it was foreshadowing because this was, I think I probably started cooking spring 2017, if I'm doing my math right. So this was a little before then, but I had this thing, and I always loved the grocery store. So how it took me a while to translate it from that to preparing food, I don't know. The point is, we know the answers. We just don't always ask the questions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And there's a few other ways I think that fit in with that. I've been exploring something. I just haven't been disciplined enough in trying this out. But there's this concept of walk and talk. So basically, just talk and record yourself speaking, and do it while you're walking. So the idea there is that exercise, and it just sort of gets you deeper into your unconscious, and then go back and listen to the recording and sort of just make notes of what are the insights that come out of that. And I've done it a couple of times, and it's interesting. The trouble is I still feel very self-conscious. I mean, I know there's a lot of people walk around they're on the phone and they're having a chat, and I feel like saying, responding to, if they ask a question, responding, and then I realize, oh, they're on the phone. So I probably should just pretend I'm on the phone. But there's that. And then the other one that I kind of reflect back every time when I'm having conversation with friends, particularly in group conversations, and you hear it sort of one person gets fired up over a particular topic and starts explaining things and so on, you think, well, that's a passion. That's clearly a passion. And if you record some of those conversations and the individuals then listen back and listen into what they talk about.
I love that. I think for your walk and talk, I'm going to add a yes and to it. I would say don't re-listen, but transcribe it and then read it, because there's a lot of brainstorming in your goal guide. The first half goes to the DEB method, second half is strategies for success, but a lot of it is brainstorming exercises, because when we try and figure things out in our head, we're not nearly as effective as if we write it down. And I think I even say, if you're not someone who likes to type, record it and have it transcribed, because when you see things, then you're much better able to connect the dots. The other thing that you said, and I love networking. You mentioned that love. I always say, if you're having trouble writing your bio, do it when you just get back from a networking event, because you've just introduced yourself a bunch of times and it will be top of mind who you are and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, that's good advice, because you've and you've probably got a little bit of input as well, because often you'll introduce yourself and the other person will say, oh, okay, tell me more about that, because that sounds really interesting. And then you explain some aspect that they've asked about. And so then you've got some additional information that you may not have come up with without that prompt.
So in my book, 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting, I interviewed 60 achievers in business, tech, entrepreneurship, creative fields, food, of course. And Dana Steele, who's in the communications chapter, or her advice is to be able to say what you do. I don't know if it was in 3 words or just very briefly, because if you tease what you do, it will inspire questions and you have that sort of conversation. So yes, definitely be open to input. And when you're networking, you also want to be memorable. You want to remember people, but you also want to be memorable. And I remember, do you remember, like, of course you do, in 2020, 2021, when everybody was connected all the time, when we were doing 5 Zoom networkings, meetups a week, because we wanted connection. I would put in the chat, and I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist and creator of the DEB Method. There were people there who I did not meet, who reached out to me and said, I want to meet the person who named her system after herself. So even if it's just a kernel of something, whether it's on your LinkedIn profile or in the way that you introduce yourself, you want to inspire more questions so you can continue conversations, because you never know where they're going to go.
All right. Well, I've got a question for you that relates to that, and it comes back to the food theme as well. So if you were hosting a goal-setting dinner party and you could invite any 3 people, and they can be living, historical, famous or unknown, who would you invite, and what question would you ask them to spark meaningful conversation?
Oh my goodness. Well, they could have, there so many options. Well, the first person on the top of my list is my mother, who passed away in the fall, and she's always great. She's the one who taught me to be a cheerleader, and that a great conversation leads to anything, and also got my love of cooking from her. So definitely a seat at the table for mom. And I think what I would do is I would put out to my network well, this is what I do every week on Goal Chat, is I bring together people who don't know each other to dive into the conversation of the week. So I would say, how many people get to come?
3.
3. Okay. Do you want to come?
Yeah.
Okay, you can be there.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to put, this is how I would do it. So we've got the 3 of us, and I'm going to post something on social media saying, why do you love goals? Is there anybody out there who loves goals more than me? I challenge you. Reply to this post, and we will choose someone at random, because those are the fun conversations. You throw people together and you see where they go.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's I ran quite a number of those networking events, as you described, in the time of the COVID lockdowns, and everybody was looking for that connection, and everybody was really grateful just to have an event like that where they connected with different people. And I would have these random breakout groups where I put people into groups of 2 and 3, and I'd provide them a question, and it wouldn't be so I'd say, yes, introduce yourself, but no more than 2 sentences. What I want you to do is answer this question. And it would be always a question that would elicit some form of deeper thought and immediately conversation. So one person would answer that question, and usually it would lead to the other person, oh, that's interesting, tell me more. That kind of question. And out of those events, I ended up, the first one just blew me away, because I had feedback within 2 weeks of people doing large 6-figure business deals, and people going into joint venture or collaborating on some major project. And I thought, wow, this is sort of fantastic. I mean, I just did it for the fun, and yet it sort of led to that next step.
I love that. And that's the thing. That's the power of networking, because the people you meet may not be your client or your business partner. They could be, but the more people you know, the more people you know. The bigger your tribe, you're part of their tribe and they're part of yours. So you can always cast a wide net when you need something. And we didn't even go into the E of explore your options. So the D, you figure this is what you want out of life. E, explore your options, do some directed journaling to really drill down on what your next thing is. But look to your network. Who is doing the thing that you want to do, or who knows about this, and have those conversations, because you don't know where they're going to lead. But when you've got your North Star, you have your mission and your motto, it will keep you on track with the bigger goal at hand. So you're drawing the people who can help you, but also people that you can help.
Right. Yes, that's a really important point about reaching out and touching on that network. And of course, if you've got a clear vision of this is where I want to go and here's some options, but how do I do that one? Is there somebody that can help me? So that's a really valuable resource to tap into.
Thank you. And the question that I always like to ask, whether it's a meeting that I'm leading or a part of, or even a conversation, it's, okay, what do you need? Because you don't know. It's how do you help? What do you need? What is your superpower? It's always a great question to ask people. But what do you need? Because maybe it's an introduction. Maybe it's a particular tool because they need to solve a problem, or it doesn't really matter. But people love to be able to share, okay, well, I'm doing this. What I really could use is that, or an intro to this, or do you know somebody who does whatever? And that also will lead down a wonderful rabbit hole, because we're creating this community of people who just want to help other people. I mean, isn't that why we do this?
Yeah.
I know it's why we podcast. It's to share information that's going to uplift people so they can live that life, create the career that they desire and deserve. I mean, we all want this great big life, or at least the ones who are tuning in do, right?
Yeah.
Why? And if we're all working toward helping each other, we're just going to get there faster and be bigger and better and more impactful.
Exactly. Yeah. Love it. All right. Well, it's been wonderful, Deb. We'll leave some of the DEB method to people to explore on your website and in your books. I think it's a good point now, though, in the podcast to move on to the buzz, which is our innovation round. It's the same 5 questions I ask of every guest. And the idea is you'll give us some short, sharp answers that'll inspire the listener to take action today as a result.
Oh, short answers. Okay. I'll see what I can do.
All right. What's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Listen to that inner voice. Again, we know the answers.
Yeah.
We need to ask ourselves the questions.
Yeah. And we've spoken about some ways to do that, journaling or the walk and talk, record yourself, transcribe. Yeah. Gather the thoughts. Excellent. All right. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Cooking. It's wonderful. And the reason I love cooking, so in also conversations and meeting people, those are the obvious things. I love it. And I even created a workshop called Cooking for Productivity. I love cooking because you cannot be connected and be cooking. You cannot be chopping carrots and scrolling on your phone. So it leaves you open to think through ideas and get unstuck.
Yeah. That's interesting. I sometimes have the recipe on my phone, though.
Okay,
but
you
yes,
can cheat.
yeah.
You can have the recipe on the phone,
Yeah.
but the point is, have you ever tried to chop and scroll at the same time?
Yeah, no.
We like our fingers. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. Do you have a favorite resource you use most often?
Okay, now I am stuck. My community is my resource. If I need anything, I'll put the question out there, whether it's through an email or through a hi, how are you, or a post. Our people are our best resources. And again, asking people's questions, it's a giving. There's this whole philosophy thing, how giving and receiving is the same thing.
Mm.
When you ask someone a question and you give them a chance to help you, it's a gift for both of you.
Yeah. I think that's a mindset shift that is tough for people to embrace. I know I often have to remind myself of that if I'm asking somebody for help. I sort of, and have this feeling, oh, I'm imposing on them or something. I have to remind myself, no, I'm giving them a gift of the opportunity to help someone. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And it is so, I mean, there's so banal. I had an example recently, which is sort of not business related at all. I was doing some work at home and I needed to shift some wicking beds that were on a pallet and they were too heavy for me to move. So I needed a pallet truck to move them. And I looked online and found a place that rents pallet trucks and I could hire one for a day. And that was all very good. The main issue, though, was these things are incredibly heavy. And I thought, how am I going to get this into my car and transport it home and then get it out of the car? And oh, gee. And this must have been on my mind on my morning bike ride. And we usually stop for a coffee afterwards, and there are a bunch of about 8 or 10 people there. And I just out of the blue, I said, would anyone happen to have a pallet truck at home? And it turns out one of my neighbours who lives about 5 houses away, "Oh, yeah, I've got a pallet truck. You can borrow it if you like." So I didn't have to worry about lifting it in the car or anything. I just went to his place, rolled it down the road, and there it was. So I thought that's just such an example of a simple thing where reaching out and asking for help can solve a problem that I imagined would be insurmountable.
Wow, I love that.
Mm.
And people want to be helpful.
Mm.
Most people want to be helpful. If they don't want to be helpful, they're probably not in your world anyway.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
Deadlines and pom-poms, right? So, but this is the thing with deadlines too. It's if you've got a we have very full lives. I think we've established that. I'm like 5 different people. I'm sure you are. Multiple projects at various stages of development, right? When you're working towards your goals, it's usually something that you're doing to enhance. It's an add-on to your already busy life. So the important thing to do is to look in your calendar and see your availability for the week before you assign yourself tasks to do with that goal. Because if it's like in December when there are holidays and additional obligations, you're not going to get as much done because you've got your work and you have a lot of social things to do. So you're probably not, if you've got like a book you want to write or an outline, some deliverable, likely December is not going to be a good month for that. But maybe you have like an hour a week you can devote to it. In the spring, let's say you look and you have no deadlines one week and a lot of deadlines the next week. So one week you can gift yourself 2 hours and then the following week is an hour. So the trick, and I hope I'm explaining this right, is you can set deadlines-ish, but you need to look at your life to make it reasonable. It's always good if you could do more than you assign for yourself, but make the baseline doable. In the example I give is a lot of people think, oh, I can work 15 minutes a day on my goals. 15 minutes isn't a big deal, but you have to give yourself some wiggle room because let's say, waiting for the siren to pass. I don't know if you can you hear that?
I can hear it. Yeah. It's not too bad though.
Oh, good. Okay. So let's say you decide you're going to do 15 minutes a day. Sunday, you can't do it. Oh, that's fine. I'll do a half an hour on Monday, 45 minutes on Tuesday. If you did not have 15 minutes on Sunday, odds are you do not have an hour on Wednesday. So better to look at your life and say, I can do 15 minutes this week, or I can do an hour and divide it up and commit to that hour. This is the other little trick, because I'm a huge fan of calendaring and tracking. Make the appointments. If you have to move them, you move them. As a general rule, I say you need to treat your appointments with yourself like gold, as you would with a client or an employer. But if you need to, you can move them, but you can't delete them. So at the beginning of the week, look at your commitments, look at what you want to accomplish, and then slot in what is feasible. If you can work beyond that, great.
Yeah, I love that. Love that idea, and I love the idea of appointments with yourself and really respecting those as well. And I learned the appointments with myself in the very early days when the internet came online, and I was still in the corporate world, and our company set up this system of you can have emails now, and you can send each other emails, and also there's a calendar associated with that, and everybody can see your appointments. But what was worse, everybody can make an appointment with you. And I thought, oh, and all of a sudden I had all these appointments in my calendar for meetings that half of which I, really didn't need to be at, and so on. And all of a sudden I had no time left over, and I thought, how do I do this? And they disabled the ability for me to set up my account in a way that others would have to ask my permission to set an appointment with me. And so I thought, what else can I do? So I thought, I know what I could do. I can make a whole lot of appointments with myself, and then I'm not available for anybody else. And so that was how I started setting appointments in my calendar with myself, because I thought, well, what do I write in there? And I thought, well, I'll just write in there, I'm going to work on this project, and then I'm going to work on that project.
It's perfect. Yeah. I love that. I also have another trick for when people cancel appointments with you, because it happens. You know how usually if an appointment gets canceled, you fill it with work?
Yeah.
I say look at it as bonus time. So that way you're not frustrated if someone cancels, because you get to gift yourself the time to work on your own stuff.
Yeah, that's
another way to look at the realm of appointment life.
Excellent. All right. Well, final question of the buzz round. What's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
I would do a directed journaling and just ask yourself that question. What makes me different? The other thing you can do is ask people, what do you think I do? What do you think my superpower is? Because we do get stuck in our own heads. But so either ask yourself that question or ask it to other people. And then once you know, and actually I think I'm answering the question, I'm understanding the question from the other frame of mind, in differentiating yourself. What is it that makes you unique? And then really, really own it. Once you figure it out, really lean into it. I tell people you'd be hard pressed to find someone who loves goals more than I do. If you meet them, I'm happy to prove you wrong. Just do a little intro. But the point is, when you love what you're doing, when you are so enthusiastic about it, the differentiation is implicit, because it's going to be a part of everything that you put out. The word authenticity gets a really bad rap because people are trying to create authenticity. But before then, it was just people really enthusiastic about the things that they love, that they want to bring out in the world. So think about what that is for you and how you can lean into it with the most enthusiasm humanly possible and see how it goes.
Yeah. And of course, that will all come about by doing the first step of the DEB method and working out what it is that drives you. Yeah.
Well, and I will go back to, we know you love having conversations, you love connecting people, right? You get enthusiasm from collaboration. clearly, right? I get enthusiasm for not only cheerleading people to their goals, but bringing people together who can elevate them. We are in the, again, repeating myself, we are in this to make the world a better place, but it's not just you and me. It's we. If you are our listener or your listener, your audience, you're going to be like, I get that. You're going to see yourself as one of those enthusiastic, again, influencer is a terrible word, but because people overuse it, but one of the people, what it is that you love. And it is your job as that person to use your superpower to help people, to share that enthusiasm and make everybody's lives better.
Yeah. And the other thing I heard someone say, and I thought this was really good, because we, as you say, we all know, but somehow we suppress parts of it because we think we feel judged about that. And the thing I heard that helps with that is, well, if I ignore feeling judged and just be myself in that way, I'm kind of giving other people who see this permission to do the same.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Well, thanks for getting us through the buzz round, Deb, and for the wonderful
so much for quick buzz round, but I tried.
Yeah. Where can people find out more about you and about the DEB method, the work you do, your books, your podcasts, and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you shared today?
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was great fun. I am at the DEB Method everywhere on social media. You can find me YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Connect with me on LinkedIn. You can go to thedebmethod.com to learn more about me. If you go to thedebmethod.com/blog, you will get the recaps from Goal Chat. So Goal Chat, every Monday, I bring together 3 guests to chime in on the topic of the week, and you can also subscribe. And Wednesdays, I release new episodes of Taste Buds with Deb, which you can find on my YouTube channel, as well as subscribe to the podcast and learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. And one more, if you go to 52secretsbook.com, you can learn more about the people in my book and where you can grab a copy at your favorite place to buy books. And you can always reach out at deb@thedebmethod.com.
Excellent. And we'll include all those links in the show notes, as always, of course. Now, as we wrap it up, Deb, what action would you like our listener to take out of our conversation today?
I would like you to start your win list. So every day, take a minute, literally not even a minute, to write down a win, 1, 2, or 3 wins for the day. And then the next time you're feeling like it's a slog, look at your list and let that energize you, motivate you, and keep you moving forward. If you've got goals or if you want goals, one or the other, you're probably tuning into this, right? Creating that life that you want, it is within your power. You have to just keep moving forward and give yourself those hits of motivation along the way, because you will get there. You just need those extra reminders. And take this one from me, I know you could do it. So just keep moving forward, write down those wins, and utilize them to motivate you when you need them.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. And I even have a template that auto sets up every day for my journal, my digital journal that I keep. And so every day it comes up, and there's actual, I've got it on the other monitor here. I'm looking at it now. It says the first part's summary of the day. So it's kind of the things that I'm working on and the things that I need to refer back to. And the second bit is awesome and wins. That's the whole section. And then the third bit is improve. So there's the, and usually I come up with some improves, but yeah, the awesome and wins is there, the first one to reflect on.
Amazing. And it's those wins, they're going to keep you motivated and keep you moving forward. So why wouldn't you want to keep track of them and have them literally at your fingertips? to give you the motivation when you need it.
Excellent. Well, great note to wrap up on. So thanks so much, Deb, for a wonderful conversation today. I've really enjoyed it, and all the best for the future. And please do keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you as well. And good luck to you on all of your goals and the wonderful impact that you are having on your community and the world around you.
Thanks.